After hitting a roadblock trying to infiltrate JCC, Sakamoto disguised himself as his own wife and obtained a permit to enter the academy grounds as a trainee teacher, putting his plan to investigate Slur's intel back on track. But the job wasn't going to be easy from here. He had to find the database before the X organization did and destroy it. Yet, just as he was about to move forward, Akira, standing close by, furrowed her brow, her gaze sharp and probing as she asked if they had met before. Caught off guard, Sakamoto instinctively covered his face and insisted they hadn't. Akira accepted the answer sincerely, her suspicion melting away as she returned to her seat. She carried herself through the third period without raising further suspicion, at least for now. The next class was shooting practice, and as soon as the students reached the shooting range, the professor delivered a stern lecture, reminding them that without proper gun handling, they would never become hitmen. The lesson was clear. They would learn the mechanics of their guns and how to hit targets from 100 meters. Each student had only 1 minute to assemble and shoot without any fatal mistakes. As the timer started, tension weighed heavily on their faces. Most struggled even to assemble the gun, let alone fire it. Before they knew it, the timer ran out. A few managed to finish, but most didn't. The professor, infuriated by the apparent hopelessness of the class, called the disguised Sakamoto to demonstrate the correct way, intending to humiliate him. After all, he believed this was no place for women. Sakamoto stepped to the firing station. As the timer began, he assembled the gun with breathtaking speed and, in the blink of an eye, fired 67 shots, each hitting the bullseye. The professor stood dumbfounded, unable to believe what he had just witnessed. As the fourth period came to an end, some students gathered near the all-time record chart of JCC students. The sight caught Sakamoto's attention, and he approached confidently, expecting to see his name on top. To his surprise, the first-place scorer wasn't him, but someone else, 7 shots ahead. Curiously, the top scorer had no name. Students around whispered about him, describing rumors of a man with a bird and a bullseye tattoo on his face. Sakamoto immediately connected the dots, realizing the first-place holder was Heisuke, and though trying to swallow his pride, he accepted the feat as impressive. Elsewhere, in the South Building's weapons research laboratory, anger roared in a man's chest. Someone had melted his weapons for raw materials. Assuming it was Natsuki, he began searching the campus, opening restroom cubicle doors one by one. When he opened another cubicle, he found Shin sitting calmly on the toilet seat, reading manga. The man, seeing Shin for the first time, grew suspicious and grabbed him by the collar, demanding to know who he was. Without hesitation, Shin punched him in the face and gut, sending the man crashing back into the cubicle while Shin walked away, still absorbed in his manga. Shortly after, another person emerged from a different cubicle, asking if Shin was okay. The moment their eyes met, the stranger vanished into thin air. Shin, unshaken, grabbed the invisible man by the neck and pinned him down, questioning why Natsuki was there, unaware that he was a first-year researcher in the weapons department. Shin demanded everything Natsuki knew about X. Natsuki simply replied that he knew nothing. His job was just a small freelance gig. Shin saw through the truth and released him, walking away, scratching his head in frustration at another dead end regarding the database's location. But the word database caught Natsuki's attention. Seeing his reaction, Shin asked if he knew something, to which Natsuki said he might know a thing or two, but first, he was hungry. Later, the two headed to the cafeteria, where Natsuki, while slurping ramen, mentioned the database could be in the teacher's room, the library, or maybe nowhere at all. He wasn't sure. Annoyed by Natsuki's vague answer, Shin grabbed him by the collar, demanding why he had him buy lunch if he had no clue. Other students cheered for Shin to kill him, prompting Natsuki to ask if he was also a first year. Shin irritably confirmed he was, enrolled in the assassination department, only for Natsuki to reply that his younger brother Mafuyu was in the same department. Shin was left speechless, momentarily unable to process the revelation. His thoughts then drifted to others who had passed the test with him, wondering where they were now. Natsuki went silent and stood up, commenting in a serious tone that many students weren't coming to school because JCC had become a bit of a headache lately. Meanwhile, Sakamoto slogged through his daily schoolwork, increasingly frustrated with the mountain of paperwork, worried it was preventing his search for the database. Time was ticking. Only 24 hours remained before his disguise wore off, and he had to act fast. Just then, a senior staff member called out to Sakamoto, instructing him to follow up on the students who hadn't shown up to class. The staff member complained that the students these days had grown too sensitive, always hiding in their dorms. He instructed that Sakamoto should do something about it, using his youthful energy to open their hearts. Shortly after, he arrived at the dormitories, where students observed him from the shadows, curious about this new teacher. Deciding to teach him a lesson, two students suddenly leaped out from behind, blades in hand, as Sakamoto stepped into the dorm's dim corridor. But Sakamoto reacted swiftly. With nothing but a notebook and pen, he effortlessly deflected their deadly stabs, forcing the two to retreat in surprise. Before long, more students charged toward him. Without missing a beat, the former hitman prepared to teach them a lesson of his own. He grabbed a pair of chopsticks resting atop a freshly served bowl of noodles and hurled them like darts, pinning one student to the wall. Then, seizing another by the head, he used him as leverage to reach the other side of the hallway, where he grabbed two metal hangers from a clothesline. Using the hangers, he deflected a barrage of bullets sent his way. Then, with fluid precision, he yanked the two attackers by their clothes and propelled them upward, driving them into the ceiling support as they screamed helplessly. Realizing their opponent was no easy target, the remaining students tried to flee, but before they could escape, Sakamoto spotted a vacuum cleaner lying nearby. Harnessing its suction power, he dragged one of them toward him and slammed the student to the ground, leaving everyone in the dorm stunned by the display of overwhelming power. As the dust settled, Sakamoto calmly sat among the students, who now poured drinks for him. With a composed tone, he asked why they were causing trouble for their teachers instead of attending class. Suddenly, all the students shouted in unison that he had misunderstood everything and that he should listen to them first. A freshman stood up and explained, holding out a piece of paper marked with an X. He remarked that the symbol meant a lot to them, but teachers had begun treating them differently because of it. Sakamoto fixed them with a cold stare and asked if they knew what the symbol meant. One of the students grinned and replied that it was the emblem of X, the assassin slayer, arguably the coolest individual alive. Speechless, Sakamoto listened as another student elaborated. They admired X because he and his team had reduced Tokyo's assassin population by 80%, an extraordinary feat. A third student chimed in, providing context. The JAA's greatest crime was monopolizing the assassin market. No assassin could work in Japan without going through the JAA and surrendering 30% of all their earnings. Those who refused were eliminated for disrupting the order. The students believed an agency had no right to decide who lived or died. That was why they supported X, a figure striving to revolutionize the assassin world while also serving as an icon to follow. Sakamoto, though surprised to learn that Slur was rising in popularity among students, urged them not to dwell on violence. Instead, he advised them to enjoy school life while they could, emphasizing that this would be the only time they could make special memories worth cherishing. The students, unimpressed, called Sakamoto weird, joking that he sounded like one of their uncles. Just then, through the uproar, a new voice rang out. Sakamoto turned to find a student named Amani standing in front of him, warning his classmates not to get too friendly with the teacher. He coldly declared that Sakamoto was just another jiggy dog and stared at him with lethal intent, remarking that the time of the J was almost over and that old folks like him should step aside. Far from JCC's dorms, on a highway, Order members Shishiba and Nagumo were driving when suddenly, from a black van ahead, two men emerged, guns in hand, and began unleashing bullets at their car. Neither Shishiba nor Nagumo were hit, and Shishiba merely expressed irritation at the disturbance. The attackers wore collars marked with X insignias, identifying them as members of X's organization. They remained alert, knowing the order's potential. The driver glanced in the side mirror and saw Nagumo standing on the car's roof, wondering why. As one attacker leaned out to shoot Nagumo, he suddenly vanished from the rooftop. Before the man could comprehend the situation, Nagumo struck first, killing him instantly and entering their vehicle with lightning speed. As the others attempted to react, Nagumo moved even faster, stabbing them with precision honed by his knife skills. With the attackers neutralized, Nagumo used the van's taillight to signal Shishiba that the job was done, then leapt back into their car. The enemy van crashed into traffic cones and flipped over. Once back in the car, Shishiba asked about the attackers' identity. Nagumo pointed out the X marks on their collars, but added that something didn't feel right. Their flashy style seemed inconsistent with Slur. As their conversation continued, Shishiba suddenly noticed something strange ahead. A car carrier had opened its ramp. There, a peculiar man in a black tuxedo and an unusual hat pulled out a 3-section staff with a blade at the end. Without warning, the man slammed it hard onto the windshield of their car, forcing Shishiba and Nagumo to leap away just in time. Nagumo instantly drew his special Swiss Army knife and countered with a backhand stab, only for the man to block it, then push Nagumo back with expertly timed diversions. Shishiba charged next, swinging his hammer's sharp end toward the man's head, but again the attack was blocked. During the clash, Shishiba's eyes caught a flicker of recognition in his opponent's face. Before he could speak, Osaragi crashed down from above onto one of the cars on the carrier, swinging a saw like a flail at the attacker. Yet, once again, the man deflected the strike and jumped back just in time, narrowly avoiding the collapsing carrier. Realizing that taking on 3 order members at once was far too much, the mysterious figure decided to withdraw. A waiting car swiftly arrived, and without hesitation, whisked him away from the chaotic scene. Afterwards, as the 3 gathered along the road, Osaragi immediately turned toward Shishiba, her tone laced with anger, demanding why he had left her behind at the department store. Shishiba shifted the blame onto Nagumo, but Osaragi caught the lie instantly. Choosing to move on, she instead shifted the subject, questioning the identity of the man they had just fought. Shishiba remained calm, replying that the man was Mr. Yotsumura, a senior and former member of the order who had been banished from the JA. Later that day, the 3 arrived in Kyoto and boarded a boat. As they departed, Shishiba reflected on how unusual it was for the JAA to send 3 order members for a single assignment. Yet after their first encounter, he realized the mission would be far from ordinary. Nagumo agreed, adding that if their target was indeed a former order member, it meant their ordeal had only just begun. Osaragi, curiosity piqued, pressed further, wondering if Yotsumura had once been close to Shishiba. Shishiba clarified that their connection was never one of camaraderie, only that when he first joined the order, Yotsumura had taken him on missions. Nagumo noted the similarity to Osaragi's current relationship with Shishiba. Still unsatisfied, Osaragi asked why Yotsumura had quit. Nagumo explained that he had blown a major assignment, enraging the JAA, which ordered his execution. Yet the assassin tasked with the job had failed, allowing Yotsumura to escape. Still, a question lingered in Shishiba's mind. Why would Yotsumura reveal himself now, after vanishing without a trace all those years ago? Elsewhere, in a dimly lit inn, Mr. Yotsumura sat alone, sipping his drink while listening to shamisen melodies echoing nearby. Soon, a group of men approached, their tone accusatory. They claimed they could no longer trust him, blaming Yotsumura for losing comrades due to his poor intel on the order. Though they admitted sharing a grudge against the JAA and sympathizing with X's doctrine, they argued they couldn't simply follow every reckless command. They declared it was time to part ways. Yotsumura, unperturbed, calmly poured more drink and asked if holding a grudge was truly a worthy motivation for an assassin. He reminded them that destroying the JAA would allow him to walk under the sun again, free from fear. The men, frustrated, pointed guns at him, dismissing his words as passionless. They declared themselves true revolutionaries, unlike him. Yotsumura scoffed, calling their claim a joke, remarking that assassins should remain invisible, their intent to kill unseen. Then, without warning, he swung his staff in a seamless motion, slicing the three men cleanly in half. Their bodies dropped before they could react, while others standing outside shared the same fate. Meanwhile, back at JCC, Sakamoto was still in the students' dormitory, about to leave. Before departing, he issued a final reminder. The students were to attend afternoon classes, or he would lecture them again. This time, all agreed without protest, except Amane, who coldly declared he wouldn't be ordered around by their teacher. Without further explanation, he retreated to his room, leaving Sakamoto lingering, trying to place the familiarity in Amane's face. Inside the dorm room, Amane sat in front of his desktop, apologizing for the interruption to the person on the other side of the call. The reply was warm, underscoring the importance of school and the learning phase of life. His conversation partner was Kashima, who seemed delighted and asked if Amane was ready to join the group. Kashima confirmed they were recruiting fresh members, but first needed him to complete a small initiation test to destroy the very database Sakamoto and his team had been searching for to uncover Slur's information. Around the same time, on the other side of the building, Shin continued accompanying Natsuki, who was busy throwing out the trash. He questioned how long Shin would hang around the research lab when his real mission was the database search. Shin nervously admitted that there were no clues to follow, nor any certainty the database even existed in a recognizable form. Natsuki offered a practical suggestion. The database might be digitized, making the search akin to finding a needle in a haystack. He dismissed the idea of a physical search through the school as ridiculous. Instead, he advised Shin to gather information from those in the know, starting with the teacher who had been there the longest. Thanking him for the tip, Shin ran off in pursuit of leads. Standing alone, Natsuki watched Shin leave until the buzz of his phone drew his attention. It was his brother, Mafuyu. Over at JCC, classes continued. This time, the students had gathered in a dojo. The instructor spoke solemnly about the fundamental ideal of JCC to become the embodiment of undetectable aggression. He explained that an assassin's mission was to blend into the surroundings, concealing intent while executing their tasks. The assassination practicum existed to drill these skills, a class where most failed and where vigilance was everything. Nervous whispers spread among the students, some commenting on how terrifying the class sounded. Akira's anxiety surfaced immediately, her mind flooded with doubt about surviving the ordeal. To start, the instructor blindfolded himself and challenged the students to attack him one at a time whenever they felt ready. The exercise aimed to teach them the difficulty of remaining undetected, and to raise the stakes, he promised an A+ to anyone who managed to land a hit. One student charged, throwing a punch with all his might, only for the blindfolded instructor to easily sidestep and counter with a solid blow to the student's abdomen. Others followed, but every attempt failed. None could hide their aggression, each falling with ease as the instructor's experience overwhelmed them. Just then, Shin entered the dojo and greeted Akira, who broke down the moment she saw a familiar face after such a long time. The instructor, noticing Shin, immediately asked if he was registered for the class. Shin calmly clarified that he wasn't and had come in search of Satoda sensei, having heard that she was the teacher who had served the school the longest. He explained that he had some questions regarding the database. The instructor stared at him coldly and told him to leave immediately, reasoning that since he wasn't partaking in the curriculum, he had no place there. But Shin, ever persistent, refused to follow the order. Instead, he suddenly put on a blindfold and challenged the instructor, stating that if he could dodge all of his attacks, the instructor would have to speak with him. The instructor's anger flared visibly. Determined to teach Shin a lesson, he accepted the challenge and charged toward him. Yet, rather than using his fists, he abruptly pulled out a pistol and pointed it at Shin's face from point-blank range. But just as the trigger was pulled, Shin, relying on his agility and mind-reading ability, dodged the bullet and countered with a high kick to the instructor's neck, forcing him to spit blood and collapse to the ground. The students stood in awe, witnessing the brutal display, but Shin felt a tinge of disappointment. His chance to get the answers had vanished with the instructor's unconscious body. Amid the ensuing chaos, the woman who had accompanied the instructor since the beginning of the class calmly approached Shin and, to his confusion, suddenly grabbed his wrist. Before he could react, she twisted his arm with brutal force, sending him crashing to the floor. As pain radiated through his body, she revealed her identity with a smirk, telling him that she was Satoda sensei, the teacher he was seeking, and that the instructor had been nothing more than her assistant. That's it for the first episode of Sakamoto Days Season 2. Stay tuned. More episodes are on the way. Hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss episode 2 when it drops. I'll see you soon with a brand new chapter.